Let's go to Melbourne now and catch up with federal Labor Senator Kimberly Kitching. Thanks for joining us, Kimberly. Are you embarrassed by the performance of your state Labor colleagues?
Well, no, not at all. I think that we've seen Daniel Andrews has fronted up. I think today was his 84th press conference. And remember, these aren't short press conferences, Chris. They're sometimes well over an hour, heading to the 2-hour mark. And he has said himself that he will be, he's the one who has ultimate accountability. He's the one who is responsible, and the buck stops with him.
All right then, Kimberly, you say he's been accountable. He's fronted up for 80 days. He's been asked this question many times. That is, who decided to employ private security guards for hotel quarantine? What has his answer been?
Well, I think that he's giving evidence tomorrow at the Coates inquiry.
But he's been asked that question many times. You know his answer. What's his answer?
Well, yes, but we'll see. Tomorrow he is formally giving evidence at the Coates inquiry, and he will be. I am sure he will be asked that question there.
But my point, Kimberly Kitching, is that he's been asked that question before. He says he doesn't know. And as we've just been through, Jenny McCarkos says she doesn't know. And Lisa Neville says she doesn't know. And Martin Pakula says he doesn't know. And Graham Ashton says he doesn't know. And it goes on and on and on. Does anybody in Victoria know who employed the private security guards?
Well, I think there's discovery of documents, and I think that the Premier of the state, who has said on numerous occasions that he is the one who is ultimately responsible and that the buck stops with him, he is giving evidence tomorrow in a formal setting at an inquiry into hotel quarantine, and I am sure, Chris, he will be asked that question.
Are you suggesting, though, he said up until now that he doesn't know, are you suggesting tomorrow he will have a different answer?
I can't preempt, and I don't have a crystal ball, so I can't tell you what his answer will be. I'm just saying that in a formal setting such as an inquiry that's been set up to investigate the hotel quarantine situation, that the Premier of the state, the person who he himself has said that he has ultimate responsibility, that he will give evidence, and I'm sure he will be asked that question.
Yeah, he'll be asked the question, but getting answers is a different situation, and all those people say they don't know who made that crucial bad decision. What about the curfew? You and your fellow Melburnians are living under a curfew at the moment. You've been doing so for over a month. You've got over a month to go. Do you know whose decision it was, on whose advice that curfew was put in place?
Well, of course, there's also a legal process underway in terms of the curfew as well. In fact, the judge in that matter has asked for some of the documents to be provided, the documents from the state government to be provided. So I think we'll have answers to that as well.
Well, of course we need, but we do know, Kimberly Kitching, we do know that the Chief Medical Officer in Brett Sutton says he never recommended a curfew, and we know that the Police Commissioner said he never recommended a curfew, and we also know that Daniel Andrews says he can't remember who first proposed the idea of a curfew. I mean, again, who on earth is in charge? Who is making these decisions in Victoria?
Well, I think there are various processes underway, Chris, and I'm sure that those answers will be elicited. As you and I both know, it's very hard to keep secrets in politics, and I'm sure that those answers will come out.
Look, you've been around politics and governance for a long while.
Formal legal processes. Well, they are formal legal processes.
Yeah, so but I tell you what, if I'm locked
around with telling the truth,
if I'm locked in my house for 3 months every night, bugger the formal legal processes. I want to know right now why it's happening. On what basis am I being locked in my house? Whose idea was this, especially if the medical advice wasn't there and the law enforcement advice wasn't there? And I would have thought Daniel Andrews, it's incumbent upon him to explain the decision-making to the public rather than have it something dragged out of him through the discovery of documents in formal inquiries and court cases. Well,
I think, Chris, as a general principle, we always want to have explanations from governments around why certain matters arise or why certain decisions were taken. And I think that just is part of a democracy and part of living in one where, you know, we contract with each other to form a safe society, and we have government, and that government is answerable to the people. So we should examine these issues, and we should examine what people are comfortable with in terms of getting through this coronavirus. But what I would say to you and point out is that, of course, there was polling, and I'm not saying that polling is the answer or has the answers to everything, but certainly that a lot of Victorians just want to get through this. They want the case numbers to drop. They want to survive this and get through this period.
Of course they do. Of course they do. Of course they do. And then when there's an outbreak, they can.
Life is precious.
And then they can await the next outbreak, and Premier Daniel Andrews can slap in a curfew or bring in private guards, and again, no one will say who's made the decision. I'm sorry to get so frustrated that it's not your responsibility. These are your Labor colleagues, but you're a federal politician. I'm just astonished at the lack of answers. And I wonder if you fear that the whole Victorian government has got lost in a sea of bureaucratic malaise because nobody seems to know who's responsible. Nobody can even identify who's responsible for various issues, let alone who took the decision.
But they have, Chris. I mean, Daniel Andrews, the Premier, has said the buck stops with him.
Sure does.
He's been very clear about that.
Sure does. You don't think he'd want to know?
I think we do have an answer.
Yeah, well, I tell you what, if Daniel Andrews doesn't know who made the decision on private security guards, then he's not worthy to be in the job. Of course he must know that. Of course he must have shaken the tree inside and asked that question. Likewise, he must have some information, some advice from someone for a curfew. It's just he's choosing not to share this with the Victorian public.
Well, I think, he'll be up tomorrow. There's another legal process around the curfew. We'll have answers.
Look, the good news is...
by the way...
Yep, go on. Sorry.
I know, I was just going to say that, those answers will come, and of course that is part of living in a democracy with the separation of powers. We will get those answers.
But it's very hard.
There's faith in our system.
Yeah, well, you have great faith in your system. You're now living in a city where you're under curfew, where you're under stage 4 restrictions, where there's been no public detailing of the advice for those restrictions, and it was all imposed by government errors. And if you dare post on Facebook that you'd like to protest against this, you'll have police arrest you in your home. I mean, I don't know how you say it. It doesn't feel like a democracy to me.
Yes, but people, as you know, Chris, it's their democracy. We've got a Premier that has said he is accountable, and people will make judgments. But what I am saying to you is that people just want to get through this period where those case numbers are brought down, so that people whom they love are not threatened, or they themselves are not threatened by a pandemic.
It's incredible stuff.
We'll get to the...
You'll get through it, and then you got to find out what's going on here, because there'll be more infections, and you can't crush Victoria again like this. Thanks so much for joining us, Kimberly, and if you could encourage any of your state Labor colleagues to come on and have a chat to us, that would be great.
I'll see what I can do. Thank you, Chris.
Senator Kimberly Kitching there, a Victorian Labor senator.